Silent inflammation is something most people never feel, yet it's quietly reshaping their health every single day. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't make noise. But beneath the surface, it can be as destructive as fire spreading through dry grass. This hidden epidemic is fueling many of the chronic diseases we see today: diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and yes, even stage 4 cancer. The danger isn't only in what inflammation does, but in the fact that it often goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. Inflammation itself isn't the enemy. It's a defense mechanism. When you cut your finger or fight off an infection, inflammation is what helps your body heal. White blood cells rush in, blood flow increases, and the area becomes warm and red. That's good inflammation. But when the switch that controls this response gets stuck in the con position, the body's internal environment changes. The same healing process that's meant to protect you begins to damage you. Blood vessels stiffen, tissues break down, and immune cells start attacking healthy structures. The real problem begins when inflammation becomes silent, chronic, low grade, and invisible. You don't feel it, but your cells do. They're swimming in a constant bath of inflammatory molecules that disrupt everything from metabolism to DNA repair. Scientists have found that this kind of inflammation creates the perfect soil for cancer to grow. It feeds blood vessels that supply tumors with oxygen and nutrients. It helps cancer cells evade the immune system. It even tells them to multiply faster, spreading quietly through the body while the host feels mostly fine. Imagine the body as a city. When there's a small fire, firefighters rush in, put it out, and restore order. But what if the fire trucks never left? What if they stayed sirens blaring, spraying water everywhere? Over time, the constant chaos would damage buildings, flood streets, and exhaust the city's resources. That's what silent inflammation does inside you. It turns healing into harm. The roots of this epidemic run deep into modern life. Our diets are one of the biggest culprits. The average American meal is loaded with processed sugars, refined oils, and chemical additives that push inflammatory pathways into overdrive. At the same time, we've stripped away foods that naturally calm inflammation. Colorful fruits, leafy greens, omega-3 rich fish, whole grains, and spices like turmeric and ginger. We've replaced anti-inflammatory nutrients with quick energy and artificial flavor, and the price is paid inside our arteries and organs. Stress is another accelerant. Chronic stress releases cortisol and adrenaline, hormones designed for short bursts of danger. But when they stay elevated for months or years, they keep the immune system on edge, perpetuating a low-level inflammatory state. Add poor sleep, pollution, sedentary habits, and constant exposure to toxins, and the fire never dies out. It simply changes shape. Cancer cells are opportunists. They thrive where the environment is chaotic. Inflammatory molecules act as signals, telling them the neighborhood is unstable, and that's exactly when they move in. They exploit the body's natural repair systems, hijack immune checkpoints, and create their own blood supply. This process, known as angiogenesis, is driven in part by inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha. These molecules whisper to cancer cells, encouraging them to expand their territory. Inflammation literally helps build the infrastructure tumors need to survive. It's not just about what we eat or breathe. It's also about what we believe health looks like. Too many people assume that feeling okay means being healthy. But silent inflammation often doesn't cause pain or visible symptoms. You can have normal lab results and still have an inflammatory storm brewing inside. Early warning signs might show up as fatigue, brain fog, joint stiffness, or subtle changes in weight or mood. These clues are easy to dismiss, but they're often the first smoke from a fire that's been burning for years. Researchers studying long-lived populations, places like Okinawa, Sardinia, and parts of Costa Rica, have found that these communities share something remarkable. Their diets are rich in anti-inflammatory foods. Their social connections are strong and stress levels are lower. They move naturally throughout the day instead of sitting for hours. Their immune systems are calm but alert, and the rate of chronic disease is dramatically lower. They've essentially learned how to keep inflammation in check without even thinking about it. In contrast, the US has built an environment that invites inflammation. Ultra-processed foods dominate store shelves. Artificial light disrupts sleep cycles. Chronic stress has become normalized. Even the microbiome, the ecosystem of bacteria living in our gut, is under attack from antibiotics, preservatives, and poor diet. When gut bacteria become unbalanced, they leak inflammatory substances into the bloodstream, further fueling disease. But the good news is that inflammation is not destiny, it's a signal, and signals can be changed. What we eat, how we move, how we rest, and how we connect with others all have a direct influence on our internal chemistry. Foods rich in antioxidants, polyphenols, and healthy fats act like firefighters, extinguishing flames at the cellular level. Blueberries, green tea, olive oil, tomatoes, dark chocolate. These aren't just healthy options. They are biological tools that turn inflammation off where it starts. Movement, too, is medicine. Even a 20 walk can lower inflammatory markers in the blood. Quality sleep resets the immune system. Deep breathing lowers cortisol and balances hormones. Kindness, gratitude, and purpose, often overlooked, have measurable anti-inflammatory effects. The body listens to how we live. Every choice is a message. What makes silent inflammation so dangerous is also what makes it so powerful to reverse it. It responds to lifestyle faster than most people think. Within days of changing diet and sleep, inflammation levels can begin to drop. Within weeks, gene expression shifts, immune function improves, and damaged tissues start to heal. The body has no interest in self-destruction. It's wired to restore balance as soon as it's given the chance. Cancer may be one of the most feared outcomes of chronic inflammation, but even there, research offers hope. Studies show that reducing inflammation can make the body less hospitable to tumor growth, enhance the effectiveness of treatments, and improve overall survival. The same mechanisms that help prevent disease can also support recovery. When the internal environment becomes calm, the body's natural defense systems can finally do their job. The hidden epidemic of silent inflammation doesn't just attack one organ or one system. It attacks the foundation of health itself. But awareness is the first step toward change. When we begin to see inflammation not as a random malfunction, but as a message from the body, we can take action long before disease takes hold. It's not about fighting against the body, but working with it. Every meal, every night of sleep, every deep breath is a chance to quiet that silent fire before it becomes an inferno. When we think about health, most people picture numbers on a lab test or what they see in the mirror. They think of blood pressure, cholesterol, or weight. But true health is not just the absence of disease. It's the balance happening inside our cells every second. Silent inflammation disturbs that balance. It keeps the immune system constantly alert, as if the body were living in a state of war. Over time, that ongoing tension begins to wear down every part of the system that was built to protect us. The irony is that inflammation begins as an ally and ends as a saboteur, slowly rewriting the story of our health in ways most people don't notice until it's too late. Inside our blood vessels, inflammation starts to change how cells behave. It can make the lining of the arteries sticky, attracting fats, cholesterol, and immune cells that build up into plaques. Those plaques narrow the arteries, reduce blood flow, and set the stage for heart attacks and strokes. In the brain, inflammatory molecules can disrupt communication between neurons, dulling memory and focus. They've been found in higher levels in people with depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. In the gut, inflammation damages the intestinal barrier, allowing toxins and microbes to slip into the bloodstream, triggering even more inflammation in a self-reinforcing loop. Every chronic illness that's now epidemic in the US has inflammation as a common thread. It's not always the cause, but it's almost always part of the story. Autoimmune diseases like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis are obvious examples. Those are conditions where the immune system literally attacks the body. But even obesity, a once thought to be a purely metabolic disorder, is now known to be inflammatory. Fat cells, especially those deep in the abdomen, release cytokines that keep the immune system on high alert. These molecules interfere with insulin signaling, which leads to high blood sugar and type 2 diabetes. The same pathways that drive obesity and diabetes also feed tumor growth, which is why cancers are more common and more aggressive in people with chronic metabolic inflammation. The tragedy is that this chain reaction starts early. Even in young people, researchers are finding elevated inflammatory markers linked to diet, stress, and lack of movement. That means the groundwork for serious disease is often laid decades before symptoms appear. By the time someone is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, the inflammation that supported that cancer's growth has often been smoldering for years, maybe even a lifetime. That's why tackling inflammation isn't just about treating disease. It's about preventing it from ever getting a foothold. One of the most remarkable findings in medical research over the past decade is how specific foods can switch inflammatory genes on or off. Take extra virgin olive oil. It's not just a source of healthy fat. It contains polyphenols that block inflammatory enzymes and prevent the oxidation of cholesterol, a key step in plaque formation. Berries like blueberries and raspberries contain anthocyanins, pigments that reduce oxidative stress and calm the immune system. A green tea has catechins that deactivate free radicals before they damage DNA. These foods don't act like drugs, they act like signals, telling the body to return to balance. Contrast that with what dominates most grocery stores: refined flours, seed oils heated to high temperatures, added sugars, and preservatives. These ingredients flood the bloodstream with glucose and lipids that trigger the release of inflammatory cytokines. They also feed harmful gut bacteria that produce toxic metabolites. A single fast food meal can temporarily spike inflammation markers for hours. When that becomes a daily habit, the body never has time to recover. Over years, this creates a chronic state of alarm, a constant whisper in the immune system saying, something's wrong. The good news is that our bodies are incredibly responsive. Studies have shown that within 2 weeks of switching to a diet rich in whole, unprocessed foods, markers of inflammation like CRP reactive protein, and IL-6 can drop significantly. The blood becomes less sticky, the arteries begin to relax, and the immune cells regain balance. This is how powerful food can be. It can either fan the flames or cool them down. But the conversation about inflammation isn't complete without looking at lifestyle. Sleep, for example, is one of the most potent anti-inflammatory tools we have. During deep sleep, the body clears out damaged cells, balances hormones, and resets immune function. When sleep is cut short or fragmented, inflammatory proteins rise sharply. That's why chronic sleep deprivation is linked to everything from weight gain to cancer recurrence. Yet millions of people go to bed with screens glowing inches from their faces, robbing themselves of the darkness their brains need to release melatonin and begin repair. Movement is another overlooked therapy. Exercise done consistently acts like an immune system regulator. It reduces inflammatory cytokines and increases anti-inflammatory ones. The magic lies in moderation. Extreme exercise can briefly raise inflammation, but moderate movement, walking, swimming, cycling, trains the body to handle stress better. It teaches the immune system to be efficient rather than reactive. The act of moving muscles sends anti-inflammatory signals throughout the body. People who walk 30 minutes a day have lower levels of systemic inflammation than those who remain sedentary, even if their weight doesn't change. Stress management might be the most difficult and yet the most essential factor. Chronic stress is a biochemical event. When the brain perceives danger, it activates the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are life-saving in short bursts, but damaging when they stay high. They suppress immunity, raise blood pressure, and promote fat storage. Most importantly, they keep inflammatory genes turned on. A mindfulness, deep breathing, spending time in nature, or simply taking a few quiet moments each day to disconnect. These are not luxuries. They are anti-inflammatory acts. What's striking is how interconnected all of these systems are. The gut talks to the brain through the vagus nerve. The brain influences the immune system through hormones. The immune system sends feedback to the gut and brain through cytokines. It's a continuous dialogue. Silent inflammation is what happens when that conversation turns hostile, when signals meant to protect start to attack. But because it's silent, people live with it for years, unaware of the damage accumulating beneath the surface. Blood tests can detect some of this activity. High-sensitivity CRP, for example, measures subtle inflammation in the bloodstream. Elevated levels predict not just heart disease, but cancer risk as well. Homocysteine, ferritin, and insulin resistance are other markers that hint at ongoing inflammation. Yet most medical checkups don't test for them unless there's already a disease diagnosis. That's a missed opportunity because early detection of inflammation could allow interventions long before irreversible damage occurs. The U.S. faces a unique challenge because its healthcare system is reactive rather than preventive. It waits for disease to appear before taking action. Silent inflammation thrives in that environment. It doesn't send people to the emergency room, so it goes unnoticed. But its fingerprints are everywhere, on rising cancer rates, autoimmune conditions, mental health struggles, and metabolic disorders. The costs are staggering, both in dollars and in lives. What's even more concerning is that children are now showing signs of diseases once reserved for adults. That means the next generation is already inheriting the burden of inflammation from this one. There's also a psychological dimension. When people live under constant stress, financial, emotional, or societal, the body reads that as threat. The immune system doesn't differentiate between emotional distress and physical injury. It responds the same way. Cortisol rises, inflammatory pathways activate, and cellular aging accelerates. Loneliness, for example, is now recognized as one of the most potent pro-inflammatory conditions. Social isolation increases levels of inflammatory proteins in the blood, weakening the immune response and shortening lifespan. That's why meaningful connection, family, community love is not just emotionally nourishing, but biologically protective. The role of toxins and environmental exposure can't be ignored either. Air pollution, heavy metals, pesticides, and microplastics all contribute to systemic inflammation. These substances enter the body through the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the water we drink. They generate oxidative stress that overwhelms the body's ability to neutralize free radicals. The result is cellular damage that can mutate DNA and set the stage for cancer. In areas with higher pollution levels, cancer rates and inflammatory diseases are consistently higher. It's a stark reminder that personal health is deeply tied to environmental health. What's fascinating, though, is how resilient the body can be once it's given the right support. Even people with advanced disease can experience improvement when inflammation is reduced. There are documented cases of patients with stage 4 cancer who respond better to treatment once inflammation is controlled. When the internal fire cools, therapies like immunotherapy and chemotherapy become more effective. That's because inflammation can block immune recognition of tumors, creating a shield around cancer cells. By calming that storm, the immune system can finally see and attack what it was meant to destroy. Scientists are now studying compounds called angiogenesis inhibitors, natural or synthetic substances that block the growth of new blood vessels feeding tumors. Many of these are found in common foods. Green tea, soy, blackberries, parsley, and even red grapes contain bioactive molecules that interfere with the same pathways cancer uses to survive. These compounds not only starve tumors of nutrients, but also reduce the inflammation that fuels them. It's a double strike, cutting off supply and cooling the internal fire simultaneously. But even the best foods can't counteract a toxic lifestyle. People underestimate the power of consistency. One healthy meal won't erase weeks of processed junk. One night of good sleep won't fix years of deprivation. Inflammation is cumulative. It builds over time. But so does healing. Every small change adds up. Replacing soda with water, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, turning off the phone an hour before bed, each choice moves the body closer to balance. Modern life makes it easy to forget that our bodies evolved for a different world. We were built to move, to rest when the sun set, to eat what the earth provided, to live in connection with others. Today, we live under artificial light, surrounded by processed food, and connected more to screens than to nature. That disconnection is what drives much of silent inflammation. The immune system is still trying to protect us from threats it no longer understands. Instead of infections or predators, it fights sugar, stress, and loneliness. It's defending a body that's overwhelmed by modern excess. Reversing silent inflammation isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Knowing that every choice sends a message to your biology allows you to take back control. The body is not a machine that breaks down. It's a living ecosystem that adapts. When you give it what it needs, it begins to heal, even from deep within. The cells start to communicate differently. Hormones stabilize, energy returns, the fog lifts, and what once felt inevitable, disease, decline, fatigue, becomes something that can be changed. Scientists are learning that many genes once thought to be fixed are actually influenced by inflammation. Epigenetics, the study of how environment and lifestyle affect gene expression, shows that inflammatory signals can turn cancer, promoting genes on and silence protective ones. This means reducing inflammation isn't just symptom control, it's genetic influence. By calming the body's internal environment, we can literally rewrite parts of our biological story. That's one of the most empowering discoveries in modern medicine. There's a misconception that genetics determine destiny. In truth, genes load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. Inflammation is often the finger on that trigger. When we remove it, many diseases lose their power to progress. This is why people who make lifestyle changes, diet, sleep, exercise, often see dramatic improvements even when medical predictions are grim. They're not defying science, they're working with it at its most fundamental level. The path to reducing silent inflammation isn't complicated, but it does require commitment. Start with the play to eat foods as close to their natural form as possible. Focus on color. Each pigment represents a different anti-inflammatory compound. Cook with herbs and spices like turmeric, garlic, rosemary, and cinnamon. Choose whole grains over refined ones and fats that come from nature, not factories. Eat slowly. The way we eat matters as much as what we eat. Rushed meals eaten under stress can raise inflammatory hormones even if the food is healthy. Hydration is another often forgotten tool. Water helps flush inflammatory byproducts and supports the liver and kidneys as they detoxify the body. Many people live in a constant state of mild dehydration, which thickens the blood and stresses the cardiovascular system. Simply drinking enough clean water throughout the day can improve circulation and reduce inflammation markers. Breathwork and mindfulness are emerging as scientific frontiers in inflammation control. Deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, which acts as a brake on inflammation by activating the parasympathetic nervous system. Studies show that people who practice slow, deep breathing for just 10 minutes a day can lower CRP and cortisol levels. Meditation, gratitude practices, and even prayer have similar effects. They shift the body from fight or flight to rest and repair mode. That shift alone can change the entire inflammatory landscape of the body. It's important to understand that the body is always trying to heal. Even in the face of stage 4 cancer, it hasn't given up. It's fighting for balance, sending signals, producing molecules to repair DNA, and searching for equilibrium. Inflammation is part of that fight. It's the body's attempt to protect itself. The goal isn't to suppress it entirely, but to bring it back to harmony. By creating an internal environment that supports repair instead of damage, we give the body the chance to do what it was designed to do: survive and heal. Silent inflammation may be hidden, but it's not unbeatable. It's within our power to influence it every day: how we think, how we move, and how we connect. The body listens to every choice we make, and it responds in kind. The same fire that destroys can also illuminate the path to recovery if we learn how to control its flame rather than let it consume us. The process of silent inflammation unfolds slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a shadow creeping across the body. It doesn't announce itself with fever or pain. It doesn't send you rushing to the emergency room. Instead, it lingers quietly, shaping your biology day after day. You might wake up a little more tired than usual, your digestion slightly off, your focus not as sharp. These are whispers from within, signs that the body is struggling to restore balance. For years, people dismissed them, calling it just getting older or stressful week, while beneath the surface, cells are fighting a battle for stability. At the core of this silent process is the immune system. It's a brilliant network designed to distinguish self from non-self, to recognize invaders and eliminate them. But in a world filled with processed food, chronic stress, pollution, and constant overstimulation, the immune system becomes confused. It starts to see threats where there are none, attacking the body's own tissues. This confusion doesn't always cause acute disease right away. Instead, it produces a slow simmering reaction: cytokines, free radicals, and reactive oxygen species released in small but steady doses. These molecules create an internal fog that blunts healing and accelerates aging. One of the most insidious aspects of this chronic inflammation is how it alters metabolism. The body starts storing fat differently, prioritizing visceral fat around organs. That fat, in turn, becomes a source of more inflammatory molecules. It's a self-feeding loop, where inflammation causes fat accumulation and fat fuels more inflammation. Over time, this disrupts hormones like insulin and leptin, leading to insulin resistance, hunger imbalances, and fatigue. The energy that should be used for repair and rejuvenation is diverted to managing stress signals instead. This internal imbalance affects every organ system. In the cardiovascular system, inflammation makes blood platelets stickier and blood vessels less flexible. The heart must work harder, pushing against resistance that didn't exist before. The brain, too, suffers. Microglial cells, its immune protectors, stay constantly active in an inflamed state. That constant vigilance interferes with synaptic communication, the process that allows us to think clearly and form memories. People may notice forgetfulness or irritability and not realize that these are the brain's way of signaling distress. In the gut, the effects are profound. The intestinal lining is only 1 cell thick, and it's meant to let nutrients pass through while keeping toxins out. Chronic inflammation weakens those junctions, creating what's known as leaky gut. Once that barrier is compromised, bacteria and undigested food particles can enter the bloodstream. The immune system then reacts to them as foreign invaders, spreading inflammation even further. This is why gut health and systemic inflammation are inseparable. The foods we eat don't just feed us, they feed trillions of microbes inside us, and their health determines our own. The skin, too, tells part of the story. Conditions like acne, eczema, and psoriasis are often external reflections of internal inflammation. The body uses the skin as a signaling surface, showing us that something deeper is off. Even wrinkles and premature aging can be accelerated by inflammation, which breaks down collagen and elastin fibers. When inflammation is quiet but constant, it doesn't just age the body, it ages the face we see in the mirror. Every cell in the body has sensors that detect danger. These are called pattern recognition receptors. They respond not only to viruses and bacteria, but also to damaged molecules created by our own lifestyle. Oxidized fats, excess sugar, stress hormones. The more often these receptors are triggered, the more likely the immune system is to stay switched on. That means even seemingly small daily choices, sugary drink, a sleepless night, a heated argument, can ripple through the immune network, extending the lifespan of inflammation long after the trigger is gone. Modern medicine is only beginning to understand how much of our disease burden stems from these chronic, low-level inflammatory signals. For example, researchers have found that inflammation can silence tumor suppressor genes, effectively removing the brakes that normally stop cells from multiplying uncontrollably. It can alter the microenvironment around a tumor, making it easier for cancer cells to invade nearby tissue or travel through the bloodstream. It can even reprogram immune cells, turning some of them into allies of cancer rather than enemies. This is how inflammation becomes not just a side effect, but a co-conspirator in the development of stage 4 cancer. Yet, inflammation is not purely destructive. It's also adaptive. It's the body's way of responding to change. The problem arises when that change never ends. Imagine a city with emergency sirens blaring all day, every day. At first, people would panic. But over time, they'd tune out the noise. That's what happens to cells in chronic inflammation. They stop responding to normal regulatory signals. The body loses sensitivity to insulin, to cortisol, even to anti-inflammatory molecules that used to keep balance. This cellular desensitization traps the body in a constant loop of alert and repair, never quite finishing the job. The irony is that our ancestors rarely experienced this kind of inflammation. Their lives were physically demanding, but they were also cyclical. They experienced stress followed by recovery, hunger followed by nourishment, danger followed by safety. The body evolved to thrive in rhythm. Today, we experience constant, low-grade stress without the relief of true rest. The body never gets to shift back into repair mode. Sleep deprivation alone, common in modern society, increases levels of inflammatory proteins like interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These same molecules are elevated in cancer patients. The connection is undeniable. The nervous system plays a crucial role in amplifying or calming inflammation. The vagus nerve acts as the bridge between the brain and immune system. When we breathe slowly, meditate, or even laugh, we activate the vagus nerve, which releases neurotransmitters that tell immune cells to stand down. When we rush, worry, or stay tense, we do the opposite. Our thoughts and emotions literally shape our inflammatory chemistry. This is why emotional resilience is not just psychological health. It's biochemical protection. Diet, of course, remains the cornerstone of managing silent inflammation. In clinical studies, diets rich in anti-inflammatory compounds, like the Mediterranean diet, consistently lower markers of chronic disease. Olive oil, nuts, legumes, fish, and a variety of vegetables provide the body with antioxidants and healthy fats that quiet the inflammatory cascade. Contrast that with the Western diet, dominated by refined carbohydrates, trans fats, and red meat cooked at high temperatures. These foods activate pathways that increase oxidative stress, producing molecules that damage cell membranes and DNA. Over time, this environment becomes fertile ground for mutations and cancer growth. Certain foods have shown remarkable ability to reduce inflammation and inhibit tumor growth simultaneously. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, and cauliflower contain sulforaphane, a compound that triggers detoxification enzymes and helps the body eliminate carcinogens. Mushrooms like shiitake and reishi contain beta glucans that modulate the immune system, making it more intelligent rather than more aggressive. Even everyday spices hold power. Curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, blocks NF-κB, a master switch for inflammation that also controls cancer cell survival. Ginger, garlic, and rosemary have similar effects. Nature has given us a pharmacy of solutions. It's up to us to use them consistently. Beyond diet and stress, the microbiome plays a role so significant that some scientists now call it the second immune system. A balanced gut microbiome keeps inflammation under control by producing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which heal the gut lining and communicate with immune cells. But antibiotics, processed foods, and lack of fiber destroy this delicate ecosystem. Restoring it requires feeding beneficial bacteria with fiber-rich foods, fermented products, and prebiotics found in vegetables and whole grains. When the gut is healthy, inflammation naturally drops across the entire body. Exercise, too, creates an anti-inflammatory effect that goes beyond burning calories. Muscle contractions release molecules called myokines, which help regulate metabolism and suppress inflammation. These myokines act as messengers between muscles and other organs, teaching the body how to adapt. People who engage in regular movement, whether it's yoga, swimming, or even gardening, show lower levels of CRP and TNF, alpha compared to those who live sedentary lives. The key is consistency. Movement should be seen as nourishment and not punishment. Even exposure to nature has measurable effects on inflammation. Studies show that spending time in green spaces lowers cortisol and inflammatory markers, improves immune function, and enhances mental clarity. The reason is both biological and psychological. Nature provides sensory input, light, sound, air, that recalibrates the nervous system. Phytoncides, compounds released by trees, have been shown to increase the activity of natural killer cells, which target virus-infected and cancerous cells. Simply walking among trees can reduce systemic inflammation in measurable ways. One of the great misconceptions of modern life is that health can be outsourced to medicine. While drugs and therapies have their place, especially in treating acute illness, they cannot replace the foundational habits that regulate inflammation. Pills may block a specific molecule, but they cannot restore the balance of an entire ecosystem. That's the task of lifestyle, of daily choices, of attention to what the body needs. Healing begins when we stop waging war on symptoms and start listening to signals. At the cellular level, the reversal of inflammation begins with energy. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells, are deeply affected by inflammation. When under attack, they produce more free radicals, which in turn fuel more inflammation, a vicious cycle. But these same mitochondria respond positively to good nutrition, exercise, and proper oxygen flow. They generate more ATP, the body's energy currency, and fewer inflammatory byproducts. Over time, this shift restores the balance between energy creation and cellular cleanup, slowing aging and reducing disease risk. Silent inflammation also affects how genes are read. Through epigenetic changes, inflammation can mark certain genes as con or cough without altering the DNA itself. That means a person can inherit a genetic risk for cancer, but never develop it if inflammation remains low. Conversely, chronic inflammation can activate those same genes, increasing the likelihood of disease. This interplay between lifestyle, environment, and genetics explains why two people with similar DNA can have completely different health outcomes. The way we live literally writes our biological story. Another underappreciated factor is the role of toxins in everyday life. Plastics, cleaning chemicals, pesticides, and even personal care products can release compounds that mimic hormones or interfere with immune function. These endocrine disruptors accumulate in fat tissue, contributing to long-term inflammation. Reducing exposure doesn't require perfection. It just requires awareness. Choosing glass instead of plastic, eating organic when possible, ventilating living spaces, and drinking filtered water all reduce the toxic load. Each small step helps quiet the inflammatory noise inside the body. The connection between inflammation and mental health is another growing field of discovery. Depression, once seen as purely psychological, is now known to involve inflammatory markers in the brain. Cytokines can cross the blood-brain barrier and alter neurotransmitter balance, affecting mood and motivation. That's why anti-inflammatory diets and exercise routines often improve not only physical health, but emotional well-being as well. A calm immune system produces a calm mind. What makes silent inflammation so dangerous is not that it's powerful, but that it's invisible. It thrives on neglect, but the same subtlety that makes it dangerous also makes it responsive. The body doesn't need radical interventions to begin healing. It needs consistent, loving attention, a return to simple habits, real food, deep sleep, daily movement, meaningful connection, time in nature, and moments of stillness. Each of these quiets the internal fire that fuels disease. It's easy to think of inflammation as an abstract concept, something happening to other people, something technical and distant. But in truth, it's as personal as the breath you take and the meal you eat. Every heartbeat carries the evidence of how you live. Every cell listens to your choices and adjusts accordingly. The body is not separate from your environment, your emotions, or your thoughts. It's a reflection of all of them. Silent inflammation may be the hidden epidemic of our time, but it's also a call to return to harmony, to treat food as medicine, rest as necessity, movement as ritual, and connection as therapy. In the quieting of this inflammation lies not only the prevention of disease, but the rediscovery of vitality. The kind of health hums beneath the skin, invisible yet unmistakably alive. When we finally begin to see silent inflammation for what it truly is, not a random malfunction, but a reflection of how we live, everything changes. It's no longer just about avoiding disease, it's about reclaiming power over our biology. The body is not broken. It's responding moment by moment to what we feed it, how we move it, and how we think. If inflammation is the whisper of imbalance, healing is the language of attention. Every bite of real food, every hour of deep rest, every act of calm and gratitude sends a signal of peace through the body's cells. The same chemistry that once fueled destruction can, with care, be turned into restoration. The choice is ours to live in constant inflammation or in conscious regeneration. But the fire inside us doesn't have to burn us down. It can light the way to healing, strength, and a longer, more vibrant life.